Good evening, everyone. Welcome here to another Inner Hour for this week. Appreciate your being here. Still going on tonight with our What Yeshua and His Apostles Really Taught series. I did have a couple of questions, email questions, which is great, and suggestions. So I encourage those. We're going to get to one of them tonight. So tonight, what we're going to do tonight is a little bit of history because of the question that I had, which is about Peter and Paul and their significance in the movement and so on. And then the other thing we're going to do is I'm going to just share some of the teachings themselves and what I think is important about some of that. And then I also would like to have you can ask questions anytime you like, but I'd like to have sort of a group discussion tonight too, at the last part. So we're going to start like I usually do, which is lighting my candle. So I'm inviting you to take a moment of quiet at your side, just to bring your attention present, to do whatever you do that helps center you in spirit, whether that's a short prayer or just quiet or just letting go of the day, whatever it might be. So here's my little candle I've got going. So may our time together tonight be a blessing to all of us and help us to draw closer to the one from which we've come and to one another. So we've talked a bit about the history of the movement of Yeshua after his death, passing to his brother James in the leadership, and then there were a succession of people we know from historical records of who came after James, the brother. And we also know that group kind of evolved into a group called the Poor Ones, or the Ebionites. Sometimes they were called the Nazarenes, from the root word meaning branch, because they believed them to be the remnant of the branch of David, the rightful spiritual and physical political king of Israel. And some of what happened to that, and that James himself was killed, and so on. What we didn't really talk about is Peter and Paul. So I want to, in the first part of tonight, just take a few minutes about that history for those of you who either aren't familiar with it or haven't heard it for a while. The person we call Peter, that was not his name. That's an English version that comes from an Aramaic word that was a nickname that Yeshua called Simon. His Hebrew name was Shimon or Simon. And he was the son of Jonah. He had a brother named Andrew. They were both followers of John the Baptist first. And then they switched and became followers of Yeshua around the time John was being arrested and or shortly thereafter killed by King Herod. So they were two of the 12 apostles. The word apostle meaning one who is sent out. And these were 12 men that Yeshua personally picked to train that would take his teachings and disseminate them. Actually not to the world, which is a Christian misconception. According to everything we have about what Jesus did in his instructions to his 12 apostles, he says repeatedly in multiple Gospels, go only to the house of Israel, meaning the Jews. And then he says elsewhere specifically, do not go into any Gentile territory or any Gentile cities. Go only to the Jews. His mission was to the Jews. That's, I know, not how we've been taught, those of us who grew up Christian, but that's actually what the Bible says that he said. And so Simon was called Cephas or Kepha, between Aramaic and Hebrew, meaning the rock or stone. And Jesus liked to nickname people. He had nicknames for most of his disciples. We don't know all of them, but we know a number of them. But he did have nicknames for almost everybody. And the rock nickname for Peter, the Catholic Church took that and said that, okay, what Jesus or what Yeshua meant by that was that Peter was going to be the rock upon which Yeshua built his church, and that's what Yeshua said. That'd be a really odd thing for him to say, because he'd never built the church, he never even built the synagogue, and he never used the word church or talked about church. So that would be an odd thing to say, since it wasn't a topic of his. He wasn't trying to build a church. He wasn't trying to start a new religion. He was working within Judaism. And the other part of that is that the Catholics then say, because of that primarily, that phrase, and because Peter was a very active missionary after Yeshua died, and also because Yeshua talks about, to James, Peter, and John, about giving them the keys to the kingdom, which is that's a whole other class we could do. What does that mean? It meant something specific, and we don't even know, most of us now don't even have a clue what that meant, except maybe as a symbol of spiritual authority. But it did mean more than that, and because all the apostles had his spiritual authority. Anyway, because of those two statements, the Catholic Church's tradition is that the leadership of the Jesus movement after Yeshua's death went to Peter. And they like to call him Peter, because it was the Roman version of rock. And it wasn't his name, and it's just not true. Both the Bible itself and the book of Acts, there's a lot in the book of Acts. If you haven't read that for a while and are interested in this part of the history, read that. Then there's a whole lot of biblical history known from outside writings, from historians of the time and historians recently, shortly after that, about how all this worked. And it's really absolutely clear that the leadership stayed anchored in Jerusalem, actually in the house where they had the Last Supper, that James led it, that Yeshua's family was involved, that all 12 of his remaining apostles were involved, and that Simon, I'm going to call him Simon, but that means Peter, that's the guy we're talking about. He was very much involved in all that, very intimately involved, very close to Yeshua, very close to the other 12. We know that probably all, or at least most of his apostles were married, because that was an important thing in Judaism. It was actually a commandment to be fruitful and multiply and raise families. And outside the Bible again, and also inside the Bible, by mentioning it, we know that actually Peter was one for sure that was married, and his wife was involved in the ministry also. So this Peter, Simon, was very much involved. And after Yeshua died, Simon started going to local Jewish communities outside Jerusalem and spreading the ministry, and was teaching what Jesus taught. Now bear in mind, these 12 apostles were personally hand-chosen by Yeshua and personally taught by him for 3.5 years until he was killed. And they traveled with him, lived with him, worked with him. They were with him a lot and received a lot of instruction and training from him, not to mention being in his presence and watching how he worked and interacted with people. Paul was not also named Paul. His name was Saul, and he was a Jew by birth, but also became a Roman citizen through his parents. The man we now call Paul, Saul at the time, was born near Sepphoris, which was one of the largest cities in Galilee, which is up in the north, and very, very close to there. His family lived very close to there. During the time that Paul would have been a child, Mother Mary also and her family lived in that same area when she was a child. And so we have two key figures from the Yeshua ministry being from that area. What you probably don't know, unless you've studied the history, is that King Herod, the Jewish King Herod, put in place by Rome, he wasn't a rightful king, was always worried about some legitimate line of David person usurping his throne of Israel. and becoming king of Israel and displacing Herod. So he was panicked about that. He killed 2 of his own sons because he was worried they were going to try to replace him. He killed John the Baptist for that same reason, and he was advocating for Rome to kill Yeshua for that same reason. And later, other of Yeshua's brothers were killed for that same reason. And so Herod was always concerned about that. Well, there was an uprising against Herod and Rome in that area of Galilee during the time of what would have been Paul's childhood. And Rome came in and squashed it and crucified over 2,000 Jews right outside the city. So both Mother Mary and Paul, very likely, and their families for sure, would have witnessed crucifixion close up and maybe even known some of the people that were crucified there. It was a horrible time for Jews in that area. Paul's family decided they'd be much safer getting out of there, so they moved to another area called Tarsus and became Roman citizens, because Roman citizens had much more protection than Jews did under Roman occupation. So Paul was both a Jew and a Roman citizen. As a Jew, Paul, by his own letters in the New Testament, say that he studied with a very famous Jewish teacher named Gamaliel, who was alive during Yeshua's time, and that Paul himself was a member of the Pharisee sect. There was the Pharisee sect, the Sadducee sect, and the Essenes were the main 3 really at the time. So that's kind of a background on Paul and Peter and who they were. Paul was not ever one of Yeshua's apostles. He was not even a disciple of Yeshua's. He was not even a follower of Yeshua's. He hated Yeshua, and he hated his whole movement, which was called the Way. And Paul, again, by his own admission in his own letters, and he usually tries to make himself look good, as most of us do, Paul says that he persecuted the followers of Yeshua, that he was present at the martyrdom of the stoning to death of Stephen and highly encouraged it. So he liked the fact that Yeshua's followers were being murdered. He actually was on the road to Damascus to get more arrest warrants from the Roman government there to arrest more of the followers of Jesus in that area when he had his visionary experience and his whole life turned around. That's when he changed his name to Paul, which is, by the way, not a Jewish name. So after his religious experience, where he now dedicates himself to what he believes is Yeshua and Yeshua's teachings, oddly enough, he does not keep his Hebrew name. He drops it and takes a Roman one. That's interesting. There's a lot of speculation about that, but I'll leave that alone. And then he begins teaching. He does not go to any of the apostles who are carrying on Yeshua's movement under his direction and authority after now Yeshua was dead. They're the ones he put in charge. They're carrying it on. He doesn't go to them. He doesn't say, hey, I want to join the team. He starts teaching about Yeshua and what Yeshua taught. And he's never met Yeshua, and we don't know that he ever even heard him teach. If he did, he certainly didn't write about it, which you'd think he would have. The only thing he knows about Yeshua is from his inner visionary experience that he had on the road to Damascus. He had others after that as well. Everything he taught about Yeshua came out of those visions. He also says, he himself, in Galatians and elsewhere, Galatians 1:11, I believe, that this doctrine of Christ that I'm teaching is not something I've learned from any man, including the people Yeshua trained, but I received it directly as a revelation. So 100% of what he's teaching is from his vision. It is not based on what the apostles taught or knew or anything about Yeshua's life or what he did or where he went or what mattered to him or what he taught. It's not based on any of that. Paul taught something very different than the apostles were teaching. They taught, even after Yeshua's death, when they took over, they taught what Yeshua had been teaching. This is what our master taught us. This is what Rabbi Jesus taught. This is how he interacted with us. This is how he corrected us when we misunderstood things. This is how he treated people who were his enemies. This is how he treated people who were his friends and family. This is what he taught about forgiveness. This is what he taught about healing. This is what he taught about knowing God. That's what they were teaching. Paul taught what he called the risen Christ. And in, let me look it up where it is in case you want to see. 1 Corinthians 15, he says specifically that what he's teaching is the risen Christ and the resurrected Christ, and that if what he's teaching isn't true, if the resurrection isn't true, then the entire faith in Jesus has no meaning whatsoever and is false. Everything hangs on Jesus being the Savior of the world, willingly dying on the cross to save us from our sins. That's the whole message, an entire message. If you believe in Jesus, you are going to heaven after you die forever, and if you don't, no matter what kind of life you live or what kind of person you are, you're going to hell forever. Period. That's the message. That's the message of the risen Christ, and that's the hope and glory that we have is Yeshua taking us to heaven by our believing in him. Nothing else except that faith matters. Not your works, not anything. Which is absolutely not what the apostles were teaching, is actually contrary to what the apostles were teaching, because the apostles, having been taught by Yeshua, who says this in many, many places, it's not hard to find him. You can Google this if you want, look up places where he says this all through the Gospels, that when God decides between the righteous and unrighteous and judges between the good and evil, what it says is, according to Yeshua, and the Lord will reward each according to his not faith, not belief in me. And God will reward each according to his deeds. Really clear. It says it over and over and over again. Judaism itself teaches that. So the apostles, both being students of Yeshua and Jews, all of them were Jews, and he only went to Jews, and he only took Jews into his movement while he was alive. All of them taught that it's how we live, and that what Yeshua was teaching is the way to come to God is through prayer and meditation and loving kindness. It's that simple. And Yeshua says things like, love is the fulfilling of the law and all the prophets. That is not the message Paul was teaching. It's just not. And not that he doesn't say some good things, and not that there aren't things that can be inspiring and instructional to us, but just from a historical standpoint, what he was saying about Yeshua and Yeshua's message was absolutely not what the apostles were saying. And they had conflicts all the time, Paul and the apostles. After teaching without any authority whatsoever, except his vision, Paul taught for 14 years and then finally met with the disciples who were being led by James. This is all in the book of Acts. And James basically summons him to a council to account for his teachings because they think he's teaching opposite of what Yeshua taught, and that he's also teaching against the laws of Moses because he's telling all the Gentiles they can join the movement without converting to Judaism. They don't have to follow the laws of Torah. They don't have to get circumcised. They don't have to eat kosher diet. All the things the Gentiles would like to hear. None of the apostles ever taught that. So there's a lot of conflict, and if you're interested in that, that's mostly in Acts 15 through 21 in that section if you want to find out about it. And then there's a lot of historical stuff outside the New Testament as well. But if you're interested, you can email me and I can tell you more about that. So that's kind of the history of it. They were at odds. Simon Peter's role in some of this was that Paul was going to all the Gentile communities outlying, not the Jewish communities, because the Jews rejected him. They were scared of Paul. They knew he'd tried to commit murder, that there's some stories you would not believe that I won't get into tonight about Paul trying to have killed James in the temple. Well-documented historical things, even referred to with no names in the New Testament, but the same account. Anyway, some really interesting things about Paul that are not widely known. So the Jews, especially the ones who follow Jesus, were very afraid of him. So Paul was working with the non-Jews. Peter was working with the Jewish communities. And Peter, because he was a really good-hearted person, Peter was often the intercessor between James and Paul. And he would kind of be a mediator and try to say, okay, well, wait, Paul has some points here. maybe we should let non-Jews in on this stuff, this good stuff, and maybe there are ways we could kind of incorporate them, which they hadn't up to that point. And when Paul would get really carried away, and I'm the only one who knows anything, and I'm the only true apostle, and all that sort of stuff, Simon would come in again and going, well, no, hold on. You claim to be following Yeshua, and he put James in charge and said we should go to James with our questions, so let's go to James. So he was kind of a mediator between the two of them. That was their role. Okay, the last piece of history is that Catholic history says that both Peter and Paul were martyred in Rome, that Paul was beheaded, that Peter was crucified upside down. And maybe there's some early stories along those lines. There's no historical record of that happening. And in the two trips we know of for sure that Paul made to Rome, because he writes about them, he never mentions Peter once as having been there. So that would be odd. If he were there and they worked together, and Paul's describing his trips and what he did and who he worked with, and Peter's left out, that would be weird. So who knows the reality of that. And the last historical piece is that the rock part. Why did Yeshua call him the rock if he wasn't going to put him in as his successor in carrying on the movement, which he did not do? It was because of a different aspect. Peter screwed up a lot, to be honest, and misunderstood a lot. Peter's the one that said, well, we're not going through Samaria, right? Those people are terrible. Those Jews don't know God, and they don't work. We're not going to work with Samaritans, right? And Jesus says, yeah, we are going through Samaria. Peter's the one that's going, well, we're not going to Jerusalem at Passover. We're way too dangerous. We're not happening, right? And Yeshua's going, no, we are going to Jerusalem at Passover. So he corrects Peter a lot. And one well-known point, for those of you who are familiar with the Gospels, he's talking to Peter, or Simon, who is not understanding and not agreeing with Yeshua again. And Yeshua says to him, to his face, Satan, get behind me. That's pretty dramatic, for one of his own chosen apostles to speak to him that way. So Yeshua chastised and corrected Peter frequently. The reason Peter is the rock is because every time Peter doubted, including the 3 times that Peter was recognized while Jesus was arrested and under trial, when he perhaps could have been some help, and people said, aren't you with him? Aren't you one of his disciples? 3 times he even said, I don't know, I've never met the man, don't know him, never saw him, don't know who he is. Denied him 3 times. So Peter had a lot of doubt, he had a lot of misunderstanding, and he was the rock because every single time he walked away, he came back. Every single time Jesus called him on the carpet, he took it, listened to it, accepted the criticism, and changed. Every single time. That's the rock. That's what we build our foundation, our spiritual foundation on. None of us have the whole picture. None of us have all the answers. And all of us mess up and misunderstand and doubt and take the wrong road. All of us. So Peter was, if you will, a symbol for us. A symbol for people of faith who walk away, who deny, who doubt, who get it wrong, and every single time come back, and when they're corrected by God or one of their teachers, they take it, they listen to it, and they change. So, all right, that's the end of our little history part. Very brief, I know, but a lot of this stuff you can find out just by looking on the internet these days. Although be careful if you use AI. AI is wrong so much, especially on literary and biblical history. It quotes things from passages of the Bible that aren't there. It summarizes things that various texts and historians actually didn't write. So just, use multiple sources in your searches. Be careful with that. Okay, so the other part about the teachings are, first of all, so now we know that they taught something different. Paul taught something different than the rest of them. So what? I mean, so really, so what? Why does any of this matter? Why do we want to know what really Yeshua taught versus what people said he taught? Why do we want to know if Paul was teaching things that Yeshua never said? Who cares? Does that make any actual difference in your life? Does it make it better anyhow? And the answer is, my answer to that question is, if truth matters, then this matters. Because it's the difference between truth and falsehood, between truth and lies, between truth and illusion. Does that matter? Yeah, it matters. It matters not only in religious affairs, it matters in political affairs, in relationships. Whether I tell my wife the truth or not matters. Whether we believe something or not matters, because we will orient our life around those things, and where we will end up and what we will experience in that journey will be dependent upon what we accept as true and real. And if what we're accepting as true and real isn't, then we're going to have a lot of experiences we're going to wish we hadn't, and we're going to end up not where we want to be. So it matters figuring out what's true and what's real. It does matter. And making the effort to figure it out is a spiritual practice that really strengthens us in times of adversity. So the other part of this and how it matters in terms of how we apply it. So I'm going to summarize for you. Paul's teaching was essentially that you don't need to convert to Judaism. You don't need to follow any of the laws of Torah. Those have all been what he called superseded. Now that the grace of God came through Jesus, all of the rest of the teachings of Torah were just leading up to that. Now they're irrelevant. They've been fulfilled. They're done. Don't need to worry about them. Not what Yeshua said. He said, I tell you that not one letter of the law, the Torah, not one letter of it, shall disappear until the end of the world. It's in effect for all time, for all people. That's exactly the opposite of what Paul said. Paul taught, as I've said, that unless you accept Jesus as your personal Savior, you're going to hell, and if you do, you're going to heaven no matter what. The apostles taught that it was based on deeds. The apostles taught that Yeshua was the promised Messiah. He was rightful political king of Israel and should take the throne of Israel. That he was the promised Messiah who would bring the next spiritual understanding like a great prophet. He was both a prophet and a Messiah. And he was bringing the next message from God about how to live and about our relationship with God as a great prophet. And that as Messiah, which basically meant anointed or king, that he would take his rightful throne on the king of Israel, on the throne of Israel. And they also taught that God was about to intercede in human affairs, and there would be a reckoning, and injustice would finally be addressed, and good and evil would finally be addressed, and that evil would be vanquished and injustice would be ended in the world. Obviously that hasn't happened yet. They believed it was going to. Paul didn't talk about that. He talked about after you die, that this is what's going to happen after you die. So if we're looking to how to apply these things in our life, the first question we have to ask ourselves is, so whose model are we going to take? Are we going to take the model of Paul, who persecuted and supported, if not being directly involved, in murdering people who believed in Yeshua, and who never met him so far as any record shows, including Paul himself, who boasted about a lot of things, but he never mentioned that? Or are we going to take the word of Yeshua and how he lived? That's basically the choice if you're looking at this kind of a framework of understanding. So if we're going to take Yeshua and not Paul, which would be my recommendation, but if we do, then we need to look at some things, not just what we think he taught, because that's kind of hard to know at this point in history. But we do know a lot about what he did and and how he lived. And we're pretty sure of that because that's attested in multiple different places. So, and early documents. So, in spiritual groups and in spiritual teachings, there's a lot of different orientations. One of the prevalent orientations in spiritual teachings is detachment, that this world is a dark, evil place, and that our job is to learn how to get out of it, and that we need to get to the kingdom of light or the kingdom of heaven or the soul realm or the higher realms of spirit or whatever we think of, and that we don't want to engage the world. We create karma by being engaged in the world. We get caught up in that. We want to detach ourselves from the world and not be involved, and just go in a closet somewhere and meditate and get out. If we're using Yeshua as a model, he absolutely did not do that. Was his life one of detachment and withdrawal, or was his life one of engagement? There's just not a question about that. He was very engaged with his family, with his friends, with his local community, with his spiritual tradition, fully engaged all of his life. So the idea of getting out of the world and running away was not a Yeshua idea, and it's not something he lived. Now, did he practice prayer and meditation? Absolutely he did. Because both of those things draw us closer to the Spirit of God and help us stay more anchored in the Spirit of God in our conscious awareness. So that when we're dealing with people or challenging times, we can be more at peace, we can have more strength, and we can behave with greater loving kindness and less violence, less anger, less vengeance, less fear. So absolutely he practiced those things. But did he practice them to get away from the world? He absolutely did not. And did he practice not connecting with people because they might bring him down or create karma for him or cause problems for him? No, absolutely not. He did the opposite of that. So right there, if you do nothing else out of this, there's one thing you can look at in your life. Are you engaged with the people in your life? Are you engaged with your family? It doesn't mean you have to like them all or even get along with them all. He didn't get along with all of his friends and family either. Well, friends he did, I guess, but he didn't get along with everybody. But he was engaged with everybody, even the people who didn't like him or the people that he had trouble with. And yeah, he had issues with certain people. Are you doing that? Am I doing that? Are we engaged with our community, our local spiritual community? Are we involved in it? Do we go to church or synagogue or have some kind of study group that we participate in? Do we do that? Or are we doing the whole spiritual journey isolated, on our own somewhere in our closet? And you're welcome to do that. I mean, it's your choice, obviously. But if Yeshua is the model, that's not what he did. And so are we engaged? Do you know your neighbors? Do you know the people who live next door to you, or in the apartment next door to you, or across the hall from you, or down the street from you, or wherever it is? If you're still working, are you engaged with your coworkers? Are you interacting with people? When you go to the grocery store, do you go to your, let's say you do an hour-long grocery run, as we call it, where you go and do a big shopping thing, and you get all the stuff you need for a while, and you shop through the whole grocery store, and maybe it's one of those that has clothing and stuff and hardware too, and you pick up all the stuff you need, and then you check out and you go home, and probably when you check out, you're in a line, and somebody checks you out, probably, and then you go home. Was that a solitary experience, or did you engage people in the store? Did you speak to anybody the whole time you were in there? Did you ask anybody how they were doing? Did you thank anybody for anything, including the person who waited on you or bagged up your stuff? Were you engaged, or were you, again, isolated? So right off the bat, the engagement is different than being caught in. If I'm engaging with somebody, it does not mean that I have to be caught up in whatever they're caught up in. It doesn't mean that I have to suddenly shift my consciousness to wherever theirs is and be stuck there. It means bringing the essence of who you are into interaction with everyone you interact with. So the spirit of who you are, the spirit of the divine in you, it's bringing that forward in your relationships, all your relationships. And certainly you can do it in greater depth in intimate ones than you can in chance encounters at the grocery store. But the idea is that's the kind of engagement Yeshua had. Not an engagement of, let's get caught up with all the current culture and whatever they're excited about, and let's get upset about it too. Not that. Not getting caught up in somebody else's sorrow and getting depressed yourself. Not that. But bringing this higher awareness and this loving essence as fully as you can into the relationships you actually have, and being willing to create relationships. The whole story of the Bible, if you want to look at it through one lens, is relationships. That's all the stories in the Bible, including our inner relationship with God. That's in the Bible too. That's a relationship. So that engaging in relationship is an important part of both Yeshua's teaching and his life. A second facet of that is, it's another big thing in current culture and many spiritual groups as well, of using your spiritual awareness to create what you want. Like, let's manifest the life we want kind of a thing. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I am saying people misunderstand it a lot and sometimes have problems because of that misunderstanding. So in very simple terms, when we look at Yeshua's life and how he worked with people and what he said that we know of, was he focused on getting what he wanted? Was he advocating that you should focus on getting what you want? Was that his focus? The answer to that is no, it wasn't. Was his focus on trusting in God's providence for you? Yeah. So there's another thing right away that if you're not working with, you can consider working with, and that is, if you're fixated on, I don't have what I need, I don't have what I want, how do I get what I want? I want this, I don't want that. This is what I want. How do I use what I know to get this what I want? Not that that's a bad thing. But what I'm saying is, the tendency when we fixate on that is to constantly be dissatisfied and discontent. Versus, I trust that God is going to provide what I need and that I will have what I need to pursue what I want, that I have the ability to be grateful for what I have, not just upset about what I don't, and that I'm going to start trusting in that process unfolding in my life without me trying to micromanage and control the entire universe, which is really stressful. And then the third thing is, did Yeshua only associate with and speak kindly to people who agreed with him and thought like him? And the answer again is no. He associated with lots of diverse people, including people who didn't even like him, people who didn't believe what he believed, people who were even opposed to what he believed, people who had very different opinions than him. And he associated with them, and he associated with them in the same spirit that he associated with people he liked, which was a spirit of loving kindness, listening, accepting, and trying to be of some help. If we could just do that, if that's just the only thing we took from his teachings, look at how the world around us is working right now. And whether it's social interests, whether it's political beliefs, whether it's spiritual beliefs, the degree of brokenness and factions that exist in our world today that only work with their faction. If you're not part of this political party, this political movement, this ecological movement, this spiritual belief, this church, that synagogue, this group, then I don't want anything to do with you, because you're wrong and you're stupid and you're the problem. And it gets a lot worse than that, as you know. That is not, again, the model Yeshua laid down. So there were many people that started out being unsure of him or adversarial toward him, including Nicodemus, for example, including a Roman centurion, including a number of people that were on the enemy side, if you will, who ended up being followers of his and or friends of his. That can't happen if we only associate with people who think and speak exactly like we do. So Yeshua even talks about that and says, if you love only people who love you, then you're not doing what I'm talking about. Because everybody does that. Everybody likes to be with people who like them and think the way they do. But if that's all you're doing, if you're not willing to work with the people who are your opponents, if you're not willing to pray for your enemies, if you're not willing to engage them, then you're not doing what I'm talking about doing. You're not loving in the way I'm talking about loving. So just those three things that I've just mentioned, the three things being, are you detaching and isolating yourself from the world and people in it, or are you engaging? Are you focusing or kind of obsessing about what you want and getting what you want? That's your main focus. Or are you practicing trusting God to provide what you need and unfolding things as your life moves forward? And are you only willing to be respectful to and associate with people who look at things just the way you do? Can you talk to people who don't look at things the way you do? Can you actually listen to them and hear what they're saying, not what you think they're saying? Can you help people who live a lifestyle that is not something you want to live? All of those just those three areas. If we just use Jesus as a model in those three areas, it would change how many of us approach life and draw us, I think, closer to the way the early community of Yeshua's followers actually lived with each other. And if you, this is the last piece, then we'll open up for discussion. If you think about it, most of the people who joined the Yeshua movement, the way, most of them who joined that, particularly after Yeshua was gone, most of them did not join that because of the philosophy. They didn't really care about the philosophy. They joined it because the people in the movement were happy and peaceful and got along and were enjoying their life, which was not the norm in first century Israel, like it's not the norm for many people now. So they were drawn to that. It's like, okay, what do you guys have that I don't get? What's going on? How do I do this? And so that was what drew a lot of the people, was, if you will, the quality of life that these believers had, and not their theology. Whether Zeus was God, or Jupiter was God, or Caesar was God, or Jesus was God, or none of them were God, nobody really cared. I mean, there were people who did, obviously. But the population as a whole, who cares? I care if I have food on my table for my family. I care if my family's safe. I care if my neighbors are nice to me. I care if my people are treating my children well. That was happening inside the movement. People were caring for each other. That was huge. It's still huge. So, okay, I'm going to pause there and ask if anybody has any comments you'd like to share with the group, or questions are okay too, but particularly your feeling about any things that I've just shared, and are you working with any of those, or which ones are you working with? Yeah, Nechama, surely.
It'll be for both of us.
Hi there.
Yeah,
Do you want me to go first?
you can. Doesn't matter.
Okay. I mean, two things came up. First, when you were talking about Paul, he didn't just reject Judaism, he's rejecting also way back as far as Moses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's going back to the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
Never thought about that until you put it in the terms you were putting it. It was like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was just a thought.
That's one of the reasons he was so shocking to a lot of the Jews, was not just about the Jesus stuff, but about, holy cow, look at what this guy's saying in relation to what Moses taught, Yeah.
Right, which was the whole basis.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all the teachings and the do's and don't do's.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm hearing is this, and it's what I'm challenged with today too. It's like, I've got to let go of my ego, and I've got to take the broad perspective. I've got to see what's best for the world in general.
Yeah.
That's what I heard was the teaching, at the
Yeah,
crux of the teaching.
yeah.
It's not about me and it's not about my ego and myself and, oh, I've got to,
Hmm.
I've got to, that has to take a back shelf.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I totally agree.
right. And then, I mean, I go into a store. The other day I went into a store and somebody was giving out samples of some kind of like turmeric or something.
Hmm.
That was their job. Right across from where they had this display of all these unreal chocolates. And I'm going, oh my gosh! I was teasing the person. I said, I'd hate to be across from that.
No
And
kidding.
this person said, yeah, it was a big bag of them. So I decided I'd buy one just so I could open it and she could take one.
Sweet, sweet.
And she would only take one. But I mean, it's just, and that's just an example of how one can think beyond themselves.
Yeah,
It doesn't have to be, I'm going to change the whole world. It can
exactly,
just make a difference to one person in a moment,
exactly.
in a small thing. But
Yep,
if it leaves them with a smile on their face or something to look forward to when she can eat her candy,
yep,
whatever,
yep.
it can make a difference.
We ju-
So.
we just today we have two friends that we don't get to see as often as we'd like. You know how that goes, and but really lovely people. They live out in the country. They have a nice garden, and they're both good cooks. And they make a couple of dishes that I in particular really like. Well, so they know about Ani's mom and the struggles, with her health right now, and they know Ani's been sick, and so they called up and they said, "Hey, we left something on your porch." We went out. They'd fixed us this big dinner, one of my favorite dinners that they make,
Oh,
and then a
wow.
bunch of stuff from their garden. These organic things that we like, the tomatoes and peppers and stuff from their garden, and just left them there. I mean,
Aw.
did that change the world? No, it absolutely didn't. But
And,
did it mean the world to me? It really did. It was just really a kind thing to do.
and if enough of us do those kinds of things,
Yeah.
everything's interconnected.
Yep.
So it does have an effect
Yeah,
on the
it does.
world.
It
And
does.
if enough of us are doing that, it can change the world,
Yeah, for sure.
ultimately.
For sure.
So I just wanted to slip that in. When you said that, I went, well, wait a minute.
Yeah, no,
I
that's good.
have to
Yeah, it's
remind
very true.
myself.
Very
Yeah.
true. But I do think sometimes we get caught up in thinking we have to do something big or it doesn't really matter. And the small things matter a lot. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Shuli, did you have something?
Yep, of course.
Of
The
course.
usual, the usual picking on first. One, we had our first ever non-heat advisory, so that was a relief. I know.
She always has to do
And
that.
then just before we got on, it was thundering just in the background and yet in the distance. And yes, I was whimpering, so Auntie
Oh.
can be happy about that. And two, for Auntie, can she please change her background? I don't like it.
Oh. She has something covering her camera. So there we go. Yeah.
Thank
That's
you,
just unfortunately that's a
Auntie.
picture of me that because we both have
No,
the same.
it was just a gray
No,
wall.
it just got changed.
Oh, she
Oh,
just changed it. She just changed it.
okay.
Yeah, it's a picture of me because we share one Zoom account, so the name and the photo that's associated with that account shows up whether it's me or her on any computer we're on. So yeah, that's why
Right.
that's there.
Well, that I don't mind. It was just, the blank color, which didn't make, it wasn't very inventive.
And I found it very soothing.
Of course you did. Stretching, so,
Yeah, I would much prefer to see my wife's face as opposed to mine or the background. So, but what she's doing what she's doing, so that's what you get.
Right.
Yeah.
I know. And two, I do not have any movie review, so James can do a sigh of relief because I don't need to. He doesn't need to worry about a movie review yet. You're welcome. um, but okay, so the actual thing was actually just an observation.
Hmm.
So I have a BA in religion from
Hmm.
FSU, and it was I think it was my last full year, and I was doing, the Express Summer course.
Hmm.
And it was, sorry, too much dairy. I was doing Introduction to Christianity because I was like, why not? It'd be interesting to see it from a Jewish perspective. And it was interesting. Yes, 6 weeks, and not my favorite because they go by too fast, and it
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
And it did at the end, which wasn't good for me because, you go too fast, it goes over my head.
Mm-hmm.
But when they started talking and getting into it, and the whole part about Paul, not knowing Jesus, and then getting rid of all this stuff.
Yeah.
It was in Judaism, like the circumcision and other stuff, and eating and keeping kosher and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It made me both highly aware that I was the only most likely one of the only Jews in the room, and at the same time rather pissed off and annoyed.
Yeah.
And being like, what?
Yeah.
Come on.
I know.
So it was just an interesting observation that I had, that it was like, nah.
Right.
At the same time being, I don't know about this. This is interesting.
Yeah. There's actually a book out. I don't remember the title of it, but some historian has put together a bunch of stuff where I personally don't subscribe to this, by the way, but he has some interesting points where he actually thinks that Paul was a Roman spy on the movement, and that he was trying to break it up and get people really confused and to pull things away from Yeshua. I don't think there's enough evidence to really go that far, but it's an interesting way of looking at how adversarial he was to so many of the Mosaic and Yeshua things, so yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, and from most of the stuff that you talked about with Paul, I did know because of the classes.
Sure. Yeah.
So I could follow along.
Oh, yay, good. You guys, I think, do you know David Zaslow, Reb David Zaslow? Do either one of you know him?
I had a
familiar.
workshop with him in the 90s.
Okay, yeah, interesting guy. He does a lot of work about the Jewish-Christian connections in the early movement. Has some really good stuff on that. I haven't been in touch with him for a few years now, but if you come across his stuff, he has some really good things on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you both.
Okay.
Anybody else?
What, you
You
wanna
really
go?
want to say something?
Comments, questions? Jan. Hi, welcome, by the way.
Thank you. A couple things, as we've been going through this whole couple of weeks, and I keep thinking, if it wasn't for Paul, that wasn't the right way. If Paul didn't do what Paul did, where would the teachings be?
Mhm.
Would
Yeah.
this really have been carried forward? How would it have been? What would have changed? I mean, everything would have
Everything
changed,
would have
I
changed.
believe.
Everything would have changed. More than likely, my opinion is more than likely by the 3rd century it would have died out. And Jesus would have been known inside Judaism, like the Baal Shem Tov or the Ari or some other great Jewish rabbis that Judaism knows very, very well and had a huge impact on Judaism. But the world at large, if you talk to even Jews who aren't mystical Jews, if they're just, I don't know what you call them, if they're sort of traditional conservative Jews, and they don't know anything about what the Ari really taught, they probably are familiar with at least the Ari existing and that he had a big impact on things, or the Baal Shem Tov, or Rabbi Akiva. There's a number of famous, really well known, that's just a couple, inside Judaism that outside Judaism Christians haven't heard of, Hindus haven't heard of. I mean, they're not, unless you study history, they're not really out there. Probably Yeshua would have been one of those. And Reb Yeshua and his, 1st century movement, I personally think it would have been inside Judaism, Reb Yeshua and his Jewish renewal movement. That's what I think it would have been. And it would have been known inside Judaism and probably not anywhere else. The fact that Paul was Roman and could travel all over the empire with protection, and the fact that he taught so many non-Jews the ideas that he taught them, I think is really true. I think that's what allowed Christianity to develop and there wouldn't have been a Christianity without Paul. And I don't think most of the world would have known about Yeshua without Paul. It's just sad to me that so much of what they think they know about Yeshua from Paul is actually mistaken. But the fact that we owe him a huge, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I don't think we'd be having this conversation if Paul hadn't existed. So it's a really good point. And like I said before, he has some other beautiful philosophical ideas in there. It's not that everything is just horrible. It's just that representing that as what Yeshua taught is just untrue. Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to bring up is just some serendipitous moments. When you talk about engagement, I received a thank you card this past week, and I thought, how nice is that to receive a card? Now, will I turn around and do it to someone else? It's that carry through. And even today, I was with a bunch of friends, and somebody lovingly got a point across to me. He said, every once in a while I'm in the car driving and said, thinks I should call Jan, but Jan never calls me. And talk about,
wow,
when you just said about engagement, it's like, Jan, you got to get some cards and start sending them out.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just to have that awareness that when these things come to us, pay attention to them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm talking to myself. I'm going to be paying attention to them.
You're talking to me too. Yeah, I definitely. Mm-hmm.
So thank you for that awareness that kind of on the cosmic 2x4 today.
Well, I hope mine was at least padded.
It was the second time. So the blow was a little less.
Thanks for sharing that, Jan. Appreciate it. James,
very interesting.
Yeah.
Hello. No cool T-shirt tonight. I will have one next week.
All right.
So I bought new ones. So, okay. Now, a couple of things. I tend to agree with Jan about and what y'all were talking about it, like without Paul, it would certainly not have anything like that.
No.
And I think a lot of it was able to do kind of the infrastructure, and
yes,
it was kind of like he brought the Gentiles in, and in this instance, the Romans, and
right.
The Romans had this, very structural conception of mind. Yes. So I think a lot of it they were able to succeed because of that.
Oh, me too. Good point.
The proto-Orthodox, it wouldn't have had, like the Valentinians, the Basileans, none of these people, Ebionites, none of these people would have succeeded the way the proto-Orthodox did because of this organization.
Yeah, and they didn't, as you know. I mean, they didn't. They kind of petered out. They had an influence, but nothing like the Catholic Church did, built on that Roman, Yeah.
And then another thing about Shuli, she took a intro to Christianity class. My second to last semester at IU Bloomington, I took a Jewish history course. I have no idea why I did it. It started from about the 10th century up until Shabbatai Zvi.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the part I remember, Shabbatai, and I remember the very beginning part. Everything else I don't recall. So it was kind of like she's in this room with all these Christians, and I'm in this room with everyone who was Jewish at IU Bloomington, and it was like, wow, this is really cool. So, and like I said, I think I liked the professor. I think I took another course from him, and that's why I took his class. But it was a 200 level course, so it wasn't terribly difficult, but it was kind of fun. So, cool. And I'll get on you. You need to email more often. Reply to emails.
Me?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Right.
So, yeah. But that's it. That's all I have this week.
I'll work on that tomorrow, James.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. I'm out of town all week at work. So. Yeah.
We've been not. I mean, I need to do that in general, but this week has been really tough because of Ani's mom and all that. We've been on the phone. We can't be there because Ani's sick, so there's been so many phone calls. It's just a lot.
Definitely. Well, thank you to Ani to keeping us informed. I was curious, so
yeah.
I'm hoping she'll have a full recovery soon.
But I'm planning on catching up on those tomorrow, so I'll get back to you shortly. But in general, I'm not real quick on that.
Yeah, no big deal.
James, quick book recommendation. If
Mhm.
you're interested, this book is called
Tremble with
the Tremble of Love. It's on the Baal Shem Tov,
Hmm.
and it goes through his life by
Ah.
Ani Tuzman.
It's more of a fiction, historical fiction.
It's historical fiction,
historical.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, but
Okay.
it's really good.
But it's
All
really
right.
a lot of history in it, and it's very,
Yes.
very well done.
It's
Well,
very
better
well.
for 552 pages.
You're right.
It's very easy read. Don't worry, you'll fly by it.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I'm used to that. That's kind of average for me. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I will. I have it on my list. So as soon as I go through my Judaism stuff in a week or two, there you go.
Yay! And
James is
then you'll
a,
know on a book review.
Yep.
there you go, a review. There you go. James is a prolific reader. I thought I was a reader. Boy, he's a prolific guy. Allison, let's get to you. We're running out of time, but let's get to you for sure. Go ahead.
Well, actually, I don't have anything to say except that this was terrific.
Oh.
It was really good. I think it connected some dots for me and definitely, kind of hit me with that same 2x4. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. You're welcome. I'm really, as you know, tickled that even though it's by electronic media and not in person, it's really lovely to be part of, connected with you again. I'm really appreciating that a lot.
Well, me too. I'm getting so much out of this.
Oh, good.
Thanks,
please feel
everybody.
free. I know you do email, but if you have particular questions or particular theme ideas, that you'd like to see the group do, please feel free to share those with me too. Alrighty. Well, thank you all. I appreciate that. And if you didn't get a chance to say something you wanted to say or ask me something you wanted to ask, please email me, and I will respond to you fairly quickly, God willing.
Would you like us to blow the shofar?
Oh yeah, let me double check one setting here real quick first. Yeah, I do want you to.
We remembered to pull them out.
Yep. Okay, so theoretically, I have it set so that it should not cancel it out as noise. It should include it.
Okay.
So we'll give it a go and see if it works. And mention real briefly, the shofar is a ram's horn. It's blown at certain Jewish festivals and certain holy days. And in this month, the Jewish month that we're in right now, it's blown until through the high holy days. So every day. Every single day.
leading up to this.
Yeah, every single day. So many of you have not heard them, and I don't know if it'll come across, but please give it a try. That'd be great.
And just very quickly, we'll do 3 different sounds that we make generally.
Okay, and I'll do the calling.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Nakia. Javarim. Trua.
Very nicely done. Speaking from someone who's blown a shofar, it's not nearly as easy as they make it look. So, unless you're a horn player, if you're a brass player, you could probably do it. But I'm not, so that's all.
It does come in handy if you know how to play a musical instrument.
Yeah. But that came through on my end, at least, really well. So, thank you. That's
Good.
great.
Yay.
Thank you for letting us do that. Share it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, y'all. Well, I hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you all for the prayers for Ani's mom and also Ani's bronchitis, which is getting better. But we do appreciate it. And her mom appreciates it. Her mom is a very devoted to God person, and primarily through the Christian lens, but very real devotion and a lot of faith, and really good person. So she I don't know how much she's aware of who all's praying for her, but she's certainly aware that there are prayers going on, and she appreciates them, and she does believe they make a difference, and so do we. So thank you. Yeah. All right, y'all. have a blessed week and be a blessing whenever you can. And look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.